In this video, we'll continue building our story. In the last video, we set up the basics of the initial conversation that we have with the king. Next, we'll make our conversation with the wizard. We'll create a wizard start node and start filling in the first conversation that you have with this character. So we'll click on the plus node button, add a new node, and we'll name it wizard.start. Rather than talk through all of the stuff that we're doing, I'm just going to copy and paste the contents of this node because functionally it's pretty much identical to what we did with the king. If we have not yet spoken to the wizard in this state, then we check to see if we've spoken to the king already. If we have not, then we don't know what this weird gold statue is, and we have the player say that. Then the wizard will react and basically say, hello, I've been turned to gold, and explain why. We add in a shortcut option to briefly provide a little bit of diversion and give the player some control over the conversation, just to keep their interest. And then at this point here, we say, okay, player says, what can I do? And the wizard replies that she has a backup plan, she has a spell reversal scroll somewhere around here, but she can't tell the player where it is because, one, that would be too easy for the player, and two, as a result, we have to say, well, she doesn't remember. She was messing with memory spells and has wiped that part of her memory, and she's forgotten how to reverse it. The player says, well, that's ironic, and the wizard says, well, I don't know if that is or not, because I don't remember. Importantly, we now set the game state variable to find spell. So we don't actually have to worry about checking to see how many times we've run this node, because we'll never run this node twice. Now that the player knows that they have to go and find the spell, we can set the game state. When the player is in the find the spell stage, they need to be able to find that spell. They need to be able to go and locate the object that contains it. There's going to be a certain bush near the wizard's house that the player can talk to, and you can imagine my air quotes there, the player can talk to locate the spell. At that point, the game state will change from find spell to spell found. We'll do this using a node. We'll make a node called the spell bush, the secret spell bush. So we'll create that node by clicking on the new node button. We'll name it secret spell bush. And here's the code for it. If the game state is start, then we don't want the player to do anything. The player has no reason to go sticking their hand into this bush, and we'll have them say it looks sharp. The reason why is we want to require the player to speak to either the wizard or the king first. We want to introduce those two characters before we let the player actually try and solve the puzzle. Otherwise, they could shortcut the whole conversation. If the game state is in the find spell stage, then we'll have the player say, hey, it's a scroll. Then we'll set the game state to spell found. Otherwise, if it's any other state, then we'll have the player say, well, there's nothing left in here. There's only some sticks, some leaves, and a sad vole. Let's now go back to Unity and set up our spell bush. As before, we'll just add a collider here. So we'll go game object, create empty, spell bush. We'll add a collider, small box collider, 2D. Position it over this bush here. I'll just reduce the size of it a little bit and add a component. It is a talk interaction, and the node name is secret spell bush. Go back into Yarn and we'll save our file. Let's test it out. So what we want to have happen is we walk up to the spell bush, we talk to it, and nothing happens. Now we'll speak to the wizard, and the player says, what's this weird gold statue? Because we haven't spoken to the king. We run through the dialogue. So we have the wizard explaining the situation and basically filling in the backstory from her perspective. And now we're learning about the spell reversal spell. And now the player knows where to go get it. Now, our state is the find the spell stage. So we'll go over to the bush, tap talk. Hey, it's a scroll. We've changed what behavior happens based on the game state. If we talk to it again, there's nothing left in here because we're now in the spell found stage. Let's now write the dialogue for the wizard and the king for this new stage. We'll return to Yarn. Before we write the spell found stuff, we actually skipped over one. We need to write the dialogue for the wizard.find spell node. So we'll add a new node. We'll name it wizard.find spell. So when we're in the find spell stage, and here's the code for it. Basically, we're running one line, then the next, and then we'll loop on the last one. Purely just to say to the player, hey, what you're looking for is a spell. Go find the spell. So this is a very simple construction that basically just checks to see if this is the first time we've run this node, wizard talk becomes 0. And then we run the lines in order every time we speak to the wizard, just to fill in some time. So that's find spell. I'm just going to rearrange this. By the way, in Yarn, you can actually select a box. You can box select and drag them. If you need to move many of them at the same time, that can be really helpful. So I'll just select these two and move them over here. There we go, make a bit more room. You can also use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. When you have a very, very large collection of nodes, this can be really helpful. Let's now write the wizard spell found node. So as a reminder, the spell found stage of the game is where the player has their choice. They can either give the spell to the wizard or they can give the spell to the king. Make a node for the wizard. So the wizard spell found. And here's the code. First of all, we check to see if we have not run this before, because we can actually have the player say, no, I don't want to give this to you. Then they can later change their mind, come back, and this node will run again. So the very first time we'll say, oh, you found the spell? Well, cool, give it to me, and hopefully it won't explode and kill us all. But that only runs the very first time that this happens, because we don't want the wizard to react with, oh, cool, you found it. And then you come back later and try again, you go, oh, cool, you found it. That becomes unrealistic. After this, oh, cool, you found it segment, we go, please give it to me. And then, if we came back and ran it again, it would skip over the, oh, cool, you found it, and go straight to, please give it to me. We'll then use shortcut options to say, sure, or not yet. If we say sure, the wizard thanks you, explains that she's going to remain a gold statue, mostly because we don't have any other assets, and then sets the game state to gave spell to wizard. Otherwise, it becomes not yet, and she goes, oh, okay, well, maybe give it to me later. After that, we increment wizard talk to ensure that wizard talk is not 0 again when you run this a second time. So that's spell found. We also need to implement the spell found state for the king. So we'll make a new node, and it's called king.spellfound. And the code is pretty much identical. If this is the first time that spell found has been run, then the king will go, ah, this is the spell reversal spell, please give it to me. But if it's not the first time, then the king will just shortcut the whole thing and just say, please give it to me. So the very first time we do it, we get a whole bunch of additional flavor text, but the second time, it's straight to business. Then we provide the same options. We either say, yes, the player will give the spell to the king, and the king will go, fantastic, this will keep the town safe. Then we set the game state to gave spell to king. Otherwise, if we say maybe later, the king will go, okay, don't take too long. Then we increment king talk, and doing that means that we'll skip over this whole chunk of text on future runs. This is a good point to stop and have a break. Stand up, stretch your legs, and have a glass of water. In the next video, we'll come back and implement the rest of the dialogue tree.